Switching to renewable sources of energy is the only logical solution for the world's power supply, and not just for environmental and health benefits, but for economic reasons as well. New Zealand's construction sector is one industry with a lot to gain by going green. Vehicles are a necessity for construction work. Cycling, carpooling, using public transport, or investing in electric vehicles are all ways in which various forms of pollution can be reduced for staff, with the added benefit of saving money. Electric vehicles are not just limited to cars or bikes. Electric diggers, cranes, and other heavy machines are already on the market, with similar or improved functionality compared to traditional diesel-run equivalents. Since almost 30% of New Zealand's energy consumption is already sourced from renewable sources like hydro, geothermal and wind, using electric vehicles and machinery results in far less carbon emissions compared to traditional gasoline and diesel models. In the long term, the greater the number of electric vehicles and machinery, the greater the demand for electricity. So, our infrastructure must be prepared for this uptake if we want to ensure electric vehicles remain a sustainable option. Another area of energy used to consider is heating, ventilation and air conditioning, HVAC. Green energy can be used to power all of these, as well as other utilities. A well-designed, sustainable building reduces energy and water usage by over 1/3 compared to conventional buildings, with a corresponding reduction in operating costs for companies, owners or tenants who use the building. For an average New Zealand home with an annual power bill of over $2,200 and annual water rates charge of around $400, this translates to almost $1,000 saved a year. This is also energy and water that might be needed elsewhere. The more sustainable the average building is, the less pressure on our power grid and water systems overall. Something as simple as a shower drain with extra piping to form a counter-current heat exchange system can save over 1 kilowatt a year for a 4-person household, paying for itself in under 6 years in terms of energy savings. Sustainable construction projects generally have higher initial costs than other buildings and structures, but are profitable in the long run because of their efficient use of resources. Although sustainable construction requires both commitment and knowledge on the part of individuals and businesses within the sector, they are more than worth it in the end. New technologies with the potential to revolutionise sustainable construction are always on the horizon, from super efficient solar panels to fusion reactors. So it's difficult to predict which will prove economically viable and which one will not, but we can be sure that innovation is the way forward.